What type of offense is Georgia going to run in 2025? Are they going to be pass happy like they were in 2024 with Carson Beck, where Carson's throwing 40, 50 times in some of these games? Are they going to be more run heavy? That's something that they really struggled to do this past season. In fact, I've said it over and over. It's one of their worst rushing seasons this century. It was the worst that Georgia has ran the ball in almost 20 seasons. So what's going to be the identity of this team? Spring practice starts tomorrow, starts this week. This is Monday, so practice is starting on Tuesday. We're going to get to talk to Kirby. We're going to get to see a little bit of practice on Thursday, which I'm excited to do. It's been a long time since we've gotten to see that, and this time it's not just going to be yoga. But we're going to learn a lot about that over the next few weeks. I'm going to try to answer as many of those questions for you as possible, but I think that it's interesting. This offense is really interesting to me because, one, we're not 100% sure. Well, I'm operating under the slight assumption that Gunnar Stockton is the starting quarterback. That's not 100%, right? We know that Puglisi's talented, and we know the history of Georgia's quarterback situations in the offseason being battles and being won in practice. So I don't think they're just going to hand Stockton the keys to the truck, right? I say truck because of what he drives. And I think that Puglisi will have his opportunity. I don't really know who the RB2 is. This kind of goes back to my burning questions that I presented to you guys the other day. And the sample size that we have with Gunnar, the situations were completely different. You've got the Texas game, and I'll go through those numbers and the situation there. And then you got the Notre Dame game, where the numbers were completely different. The situation was completely different. To me, though, I'm very, very curious. I have so many questions for this Georgia team. But what type of offense are the Dogs going to run? We know it's Mike Bobo. I know that a lot of you are not excited about that, but he's got the extension through 2026. And it just is what it is, and you need to just ride the wave. Like I've said, I think this is the judgment year for Bobo on a more serious level when you've got completely new personnel and personnel that they're trying to handcraft for you. So to me, hold your judgment off until we get into this season, at least in a harsh manner. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about Georgia's offense, Gunnar Stockton, Mike Bobo, Ryan Puglisi, Nate Frazier, all of it. Zachariah Branch. I think that Georgia's going to try to run the ball. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about Georgia trying to run the ball. You know that Kirby, Georgia, everybody in that program does not like the numbers that they put out in the rushing game a year ago. It was not good. Okay? 4 yards per carry, 1,700 yards. Those numbers just don't match it. The touchdowns, none of it. All of those numbers, the passing numbers regressed too, but the attempts were part of it. When you look at Georgia's stats, and you look at Carson Beck's stats, he ended up being about 8 to 10 pass attempts shy of breaking Stetson Bennett's record. Okay, that Stetson set in 2022, for pass attempts. Carson was not far off from breaking that record in 13 games. Stetson did it in 15 games. They were passing a lot. Now, situations were different. They had to claw their way back against Georgia Tech. They had to claw their way back, and they failed against Alabama. He threw for, I want to say 48 times, threw 48 passes against Mississippi State. They didn't need to do that. All right, they had to lead the entire game. So Georgia was pass happy. Why? They didn't run the ball successfully. Well, how do you not run the ball successfully when you have Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson and these guys that are being tabbed as the most athletic offensive linemen in this upcoming NFL draft? Xavier Truss, a guy who'd been around for a long time. Dylan Fairchild, a guy that became an All-American guard. Yet, Georgia couldn't run the ball. Not to the success that they wanted. I think that you're going to see more of an emphasis on running the football in 2025. Especially if Gunnar Stockton is the guy. They proved that. They proved that against Texas. Well, hold your horses, Ryan. Gunnar wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place, right? He's replacing Carson Beck. Maybe they just didn't trust him. And the play calling kind of told me they didn't necessarily trust Gunnar Stockton to throw it in the red zone, right? I did a deep dive on the play calling differences between when Carson's out there and when Gunnar's out there and in situational purposes. I did a deep dive for y'all in December about that. It's on the site. It's on the YouTube if you're interested in going and hearing about that. But then they did air it out a little bit more against Notre Dame. And part of that is why? Why are they airing it out against Notre Dame? Why is Gunnar Stockton throwing for 32 times? They were down. They were down pretty much the whole game. And they're trying to claw their way back into it. So some of it is situational play calling, and I know that you have to take that context into it. But what we learned against Texas, and while Texas had one of the best pass defenses in college football last year with a very loaded secondary, it's also noted what Georgia successfully and also tried to do, and then they did it successfully against Texas in the SEC Championship when Gunnar Stockton got in the game, was they ran the ball really well. Gunnar Stockton and the ability to run RPOs with him, the ability to have the threat of him taking off on a read option, the ability to have his threat with QB draws, which they ran, I think, 4 QB draws against Texas in the second half and overtime. That opened up Georgia's run game. Nate Frazier carried it 6 times for 47 yards. You get good averages out of that. Trevor Etienne carried it 16 times for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those combined numbers for Georgia didn't exist pretty much the rest of the season. They didn't run like that, except for against UMass and other bad teams. Otherwise, Georgia didn't run with authority the way that they did in the second half. Against the Texas Longhorns in the SEC Championship game. That is something that they're going to want to tap into. If Gunnar Stockton is Georgia's quarterback in 2025, then it's going to be about running the ball, to me. Now, there may be some limitations with that. You got Nate Frazier, but we don't really know what's behind that. They don't run the ball with Cash Jones. I know that he's going to get touches, and I know that he's going to get his receptions, and he's going to get out there. But they don't run the ball often with him. To me, both Roderick and Branson Robinson are a little bit of mysteries because of the health. Now, when they're out there, we've seen the talent, but they're still mysteries. And then, to me, it's yet to be seen, did Dwight Phillips Jr. or Chauncey Bowens take a step forward in this offense? Totally possible. I'm not discounting that at all. So I do think Georgia's going to want to run the ball. Now, they went out and they got Zachariah Branch. They went out and they got Noah Thomas. They went and they signed some really exciting players in the 2025 class. Receivers like C.J. Wiley and Taylor Tabor. Tight end depth that's probably not going to play much, right? But the receivers could. Nitro Tuggle is a guy. Sokovie White. These are players that I think can contribute to this offense. Maybe I'm wired to be optimistic about these things. But when you look at the breakdown of Georgia's offense last season compared to this season, the weapons are better. You subtract DTN and Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith and Benjamin Yurosek, and you add Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas and anoint Nate Frazier, and you still have good tight ends, and you add in some freshman talent that can supplement, if not get on the field, then I think you've got to be excited about the offensive personnel. And if, as good as individually the Georgia offensive linemen were, it says something that they struggled as much as they did in the run game. And new faces may be good. And it's one of those things where maybe a positive spin should be taken on it. So that's one way of looking at it. Now with the passing game, whether it's Gunnar Puglisi, they've got better weapons. Zachariah Branch is one of the higher rated receivers of recent years. He was the number 1 receiver in that 23 class. And he is the type of explosion that you had in bits and pieces with Arian Smith. You had with Lyle McConkey, Bowers, right? He has that mold. I'm not saying he's going to do that. I'm saying he has a chance to do that. Noah Thomas is a go-get-it guy that they haven't had. I'll let you know this week if Kobe Young's still around. I'll be looking for it at least. Because with that legal situation, I'm not sure if he's coming back to Georgia or not. And we haven't had an opportunity to ask about it either. I imagine that's one of the first questions that Kirby gets asked on Tuesday. But when you look at this offense, I see a more balanced one coming, not an air raid, but an opportunity to be more efficient in the passing game while also running the ball better. At least that is the goal when you look at the regression that they had in 2024. So I think personnel, get excited. Coach, don't be excited about it if you don't want to be. I would say that this has an opportunity to be really good, though. That's my take. If I learn more that's contradictory to that over the next few weeks, I'll let you know. Thanks for watching.